Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to be finishing up what we're doing. At least I should say continuing. I don't think we're necessarily going to finish. There's quite a few assets we got to still get here. Our little engagement between China and Vietnam in a very, very modern setting of basically a year into the future from here. Again, this has got to be roughly a year from when this video was made, depending on when you watch it. So what we did last time is we went ahead and we basically constructed all the naval and air assets available to Vietnam. We put in all the major air bases, making them all targets. We also put in all the air defense. We took some time to also put in all the EW. We put on the port of Haiphong. We also set up some of these submarine fleets as well. What we're going to be doing this time is we're going to be putting together the contingent of the Chinese forces, which are, to say the least, numerous. And we're also going to start, kind of fine-tuning things to come up with what the actual scenario is going to be. So first things first, if we take a look at all of our Vietnamese air bases, though, we went ahead and put plenty of aircraft here. We appropriately named all the regiments. Now what we want to do is we want to start thinking a little bit about in terms of, we're probably going to be playing this from the perspective of the Chinese. So what are we most likely to face? So let's flip that question around for a second here and say, if I were Vietnam and I knew my neighbor was China, which has an air force almost 10 times larger than us, what would I be putting all my money and my assets into, as well as armaments and loadouts? And the first thing that comes to mind naturally would probably be air-to-air loadouts. I know some of you are sitting there going, why don't you load up these aircraft with anti-ship missiles? That makes a lot of sense, except for the fact that the Chinese Navy is so large that if we tried to run it, even with the entire Vietnamese Air Force, all firing anti-ship missiles together, our total damage we're going to achieve is going to be not nearly as great, especially given the fact that literally China has a border with Vietnam. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going, well, wait a minute. Why even bother? I mean, if China's just going to be sitting up here right now and they say, hey, we're just going to steamroll Vietnam, why don't we just steamroll them right over the border? And again, we can use short-range rockets to wreck their bases, and that'll probably be what that will take the shape of. So when I was thinking that through over the last week, I'm sitting there going, okay, so that's not very much of a scenario. But then it occurred to me, what if you created some sort of geopolitical situation that China had to operate within, some kind of constraint that limited their ability to basically steamroll North Vietnam here? And that's when it occurred to me that this little tiny group of islands that is chilling right down here in the center might not be a bad idea as far as what we want to actually play around with. These islands down here, of course, as you guys are probably familiar, so these are the Spratly Islands. If you go to the north, of course, you have the Paracel Islands. So I was sitting there going, would it be interesting if China was going after the Spratly Islands? Let's assume, for example, there's a strategic or maybe there's an oil reason. And let's also assume because it's so far away, they won't be able to just steamroll North Vietnam. They're going to try to do a limited engagement. Basically come rolling in here with their naval assets, say, hey, we own the place. Vietnamese, of course, are going to be like, hey, you don't own the place. There's going to be a little bit of shooting back and forth. And the whole idea is it's going to be a relatively limited engagement. It's going to cause a lot of damage really quickly. With that in mind, that really shifts my strategic thinking as far as China goes. Now, when it comes to naval bases in China, you basically have the one down here in Hainan. You also have the one up in Shenzhen, Hong Kong as well. So if any naval assets are going to be deployed, they're basically all going to be concentrated down here. So if we do some quick little tactical measurements here, that's a 700 nautical mile flight. This is a 230, let's try it all the way down. That is a 621 nautical mile flight. Now we have fair sides. If the fight is actually going to take place here overall, that also means we can take our submarines, which honestly, these are the secret weapons of Vietnam at this time. We can move them into a much better position. We can also take our surface assets and basically hide them so that they're not going to get whacked as soon as the fight starts. This also means for the Chinese side, they're going to be relying predominantly on amphibious forces as well as traditional surface assets. Their air force, unfortunately, is going to have to stay mostly home. And like pretending this whole thing is going to be a relatively limited engagement simply would mean that now that that's all been established, we kind of know what we're going to need as far as the Chinese goes. And we know what the Vietnamese are going to need as far as the Air Force goes. So let's set that up first. So coming up to the end by, we have Su-22Ms. These are not too bad of aircraft. It's a fixed wing. It's an attack aircraft. It does have the capability of carrying some pretty traditional sort of anti-aircraft missiles. So we're going to have to put this to good use here. Generally, the rule is whenever you're building any sort of squadron, if it's kind of like around the world kind of ready times, you always want to take a third of the squadron and treat them as being ready. I always like to pick another third of the squadron being readied, and I always like to have the last third of the squadron basically be inside of maintenance. Now, some people hate the maintenance concept. They feel it just clogs up the scenario. But personally, I love making aircraft in maintenance on nice airports because what will happen is if you shoot up the airport, you're going to be damaging the aircraft that are actually there. Aha, we have a problem. Unfortunately for us, we did not set up any of these different items up here yet. So I'm going to go to Scenario Features, go ahead and flick these on. I'm not going to do realistic submarine communications, although this would be a spectacular time to put these into use, because that would mean any submarine that detects somebody is unable to communicate. This is going to complicate things a little bit. And also turn on communication disruption. Press OK, and we'll go back to what we were doing a moment ago. Excuse me. So I'm going to say this first group here. I'm going to go ahead and mark them. I'm going to equip these. Since this is our attack aircraft, we can use these missiles, but these are R3s, which if anybody knows anything about an R3, they'll be like, you might as well just use harsh language instead. Instead, what I'm going to do for this particular group is I'm going to have them do kind of like the sneaky, low altitude sneaky attack here. I know that sounds like a technical term. And we're going to try to put these guys to use with these KH-28s. Now, the KH-28 is a unique weapon because it has a 65 nautical mile range. So this will be a really, really fun surprise for the Chinese Navy when they suddenly get all their radars knocked out by a surprise. Probability would state that they're probably not going to happen, but you know what? You never know. We might as well give them a chance. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly pause everything and zip through and kind of set everybody else up. In general, all the different fighter aircraft I'm going to go ahead and equip so that they're ready for air-to-air, and I'm also going to go ahead and establish kind of a little combat air patrol zone down on this side of things. All right, we're all set. So now with that being said, we've gotten everything all well established. Each one of these air bases has been appropriately equipped with having some ready units, some maintenance units, and some units that will be available in usually between 3 and 6 hours, depending kind of the scenario. So the next thing I need to do is, since our concentration is going to be down here at the Spratly Islands, we're actually going to shift some of the, especially submarine assets, to the south to basically act as though, kind of the advanced screening force, just to make things a little bit complicated for incoming player here. Now, keep in mind, each one of these submarines does not have the capability to communicate unless it is surfaced. So I'm actually going to take the Haiphong, which would be really, really appropriate to park near Haiphong, and I'm actually going to park it here. And I'm going to use that kind of as that little kind of keep an eye on thing. I'm also going to use the Kanhoa and basically bring it up a little bit, which means we have this really nasty submarine presence, basically ready to rock to make things a little bit more exciting for us. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save our game here because everything's coming good. Once you hit a point in your scenario, by the way, you always want to consider going ahead and designing things so that you can go ahead and use versions, call it, 22.1, 22.3 or something like that so you can keep track of them. For now, this is all just set up, so I'm not going too crazy as far as all my individual iterations are going to be considered. Now, one thing I do want to do, though, is I want to establish kind of a no navigation zone over China. Now, normally when I do this, I just build my little waypoints and go ahead and establish this huge zone as no navigation. However, I much rather do it from a more player perspective in the sense that, there's an S-400 there. I probably should be flying into that. The problem is remember, this is going to be our AI player, and because of that, they're not going to be smart enough to know not to fly over the S-400 site. So, of course, we're going to have to go ahead and tell them, please don't do that. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and control right-click. I'm going to say go ahead and define a rectangular pattern here. I'm going to drag it right around here and basically say this is the no-go. Do not go here. This is going to be a very, very short fight if you choose to go here. I'm not even going to attach any SAMs or anything. I think that's getting a little too rude. So I'm going to go up to here. I'm going to say no navigation zones. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this the no zone. Why not, right? So I'm going to shut the visible reference points and make sure this all applies. I'm going to call this one locked. Check, 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 check. Save. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and now this is the no zone. Again, this is so the AI doesn't accidentally fly over Chinese assets. Let's say they know that there's a ship here, and they go, wee, and try to go across the top of it. Normally, like I said, we could put like a bunch of SAMs in here, which would be the realistic thing to do. But this is, again, think about it from the AI's perspective for a moment here. The other thing you want to think about, too, is this upper right point, actually. Now that I'm thinking about that real fast, we actually need to change that. Because one of the problems we're going to have, I'm going to make these visible real fast, is they're going to have a tendency to wander into China also. So I'm just going to make this zone just a little bit taller to kind of discourage them from, like I said, going exploring into places they really should not be exploring. Let me go ahead and shut that off. I'll lock that up. And save. Remember, the player is not going to be playing as Vietnam. To actually set that up, I'm going to do add edit sides. I'm going to go ahead and click on China. I'm going to make sure that it's not computer only. I'm going to set neutral to computer only. I'm going to set Vietnam to computer only as well. Now, one thing I would like to do with my neutral is I like to actually make them blind so that they don't have any calculations. Remember, these neutrals are going to end up being our civilian shipping, which is going to make this scenario very, very irritating later on. But again, hey, we're making this a modern tactical challenge here. Okay, so this has all been done. We've got a pretty good collection of Air Force up here. Again, if I were Vietnam, I'd be spending most of my efforts defending up here. Some of the stuff that we have down here, we can certainly employ as some sort of combat air patrol. But remember, the Chinese Navy has carriers now, and they have more than enough aircraft to kind of keep things busy. Any attack that we do attempt will probably get wasted, so we have to time this very, very carefully as far as Vietnamese assets goes. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up a little point up here. Let me deselect all my points. And I'm going to use this as my kind of general combat air patrol zone. Again, I'm going to skirt right around the line here, and I'll come out to see just a little bit. And we'll call this kind of like the northern zone. Again, I'm not doing anything too sophisticated here. I don't need to. And I always warn people, do not polish the cannonball is what I always tell my students at school. Because sometimes they'll get a little bit swept away with trying to get these things absolutely perfect. It's like, you just don't need to do that. So I'm going to go in here and say cap north. Again, this is just going to be a general round the clock. Keep an eye on all the aircraft that are up here. Now I've got tons of aircraft at my disposal here. I'm going to make sure this is set to 2. I'm going to make sure active emissions only inside the prosecution zone. Common sense, you want to be careful with that. I'm going to leave it in weapons range. That's fine for me. The shape looks perfect. Of course, my spelling does not look so perfect, so I'm going to fix that real fast. All right, that looks pretty good to me. All right, rather than coming in here and dialing each one of these units individually and trying to guess where each one of these are, if you actually click on them in the map, it'll highlight what airbase they're at. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this group right here. I'm going to go ahead and slap them in here. Open that box back up. Let's see where this next group is. I believe these guys are also in the north. Delightful. Go ahead and slap that group over there. I feel kind of naughty using MiG-21s for this purpose, but those guys are Southerns. I'm not going to bother with them. And that's it for our MiG-21s. We got some hips up at the top. We also have some Sukhoi 30s, which are actually wonderful, wonderful aircraft. The problem with our Sukhoi 30s, though, and this is, to say the least, it's a bummer. Let's go ahead and get one of these aircraft. Those are MiG-21s. You guys are, let me just grab it real fast. Those are MiG-21s. Those are Mi-8s. This is Yenbai. Oh, those are wrong ones. Sorry about that. Go down here, Ladrang. No. No. You ever get a feeling? There we go. Let's go ahead and take a look real quickly. So if we are in an air-to-air mission, let's see here. That's going to give us a range. We want to go check this real fast. 200 nautical miles, which is not great. So if I actually were to sit here and measure from up here down, 200 nautical miles gets us to here, which is not nearly enough. On the flip side, you'll notice 200 nautical miles gets us just to the edge of the Spratly Islands, which is going to be plenty for any of our southern-based units. So unfortunately, all these guys, we can assign them to the northern, but we cannot assign them to the southern as far as the cap zone goes. I'll go ahead and make sure that's all set. Those are all southern aircraft. I'm going to leave the fitters completely alone. We have some SKs, which is wonderful because look where they're positioned. Perfectly placed for that. We also have some LZs, ZAs, which are kind of fun if I want to do some kind of suicide mission here. I don't really feel like wasting aircraft. Again, if this were a real-world conflict, Vietnam would basically be doing delaying actions the entire time to try to let the rest of the world to come help them out. I'm not saying that the Vietnamese don't have an amazing armed defense. They have incredible IADs and everything. It's just the reality is they have to preserve their assets because they just don't have as many, and they cannot replace them quickly. So that's going to really, really adjust the way they'd approach these kind of disasters and programs. Okay, this is all set. I'm happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and press save real fast. So again, we got those all well established. We're going to go ahead and set up our southern zone now. So let me go ahead and get rid of everybody except for those 3. These are going to basically act as my little kind of buffers here. So I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to try to come out to sea just a little bit here. That looks pretty good to me. I have a feeling when I do this, it's going to blow up on me like it always does. There's nothing new there. Call this one Cap South. We'll do a patrol mission, and ideally what they would do is basically hit and run attacks. They would try not to go right at it, because it would just be way, 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 way too messy. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that group there. I'm happy with all these settings. I'm going to disable this one real fast. Let's go grab, helicopters. That sounds like a good idea. Let's go ahead and grab on some of these Sukhoi 30s. Go ahead and toss that in there as well. And we also have, yes, oh boy, this will be good. Sukhoi 27 SKs, yes. I'm going to go ahead and slap those into the group too. So we actually have a pretty substantial amount of aircraft that we can use to kind of keep an eye on the south. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to expand this just a teeny tiny bit to include the Spratly Islands. Unfortunately, this is going to cost us a lot of aircraft, but it's also going to provide a nice little complication, a distraction for the Chinese. We're basically going to have to become straight down here, launched from the carriers when they get basically here, and then start cleaning this out. Again, you're trying to trap the player here. Can you design it in a way that if they come out early, then you launch the aircraft? And ideally, this whole mission here would not be enabled until we've been able to identify the Chinese forces. That's a really, really big deal because if everybody launches early, basically they're going to run out of fuel before the fun is actually going to get started. So it's definitely something you want to think about from a design perspective. We'll come back to that in a little while. Now I'm just going to leave myself a little note to come remember that. And now our 2 caps are set up pretty well. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to put our SAGs to work. Again, these are surface action groups. We have a couple different SAGs at our disposal. We have a couple of these minesweepers, which you're going to need them. We have a couple of this group here, which is a little bit bigger. These are OSAs. These are really, really cool missile boats. But again, they're not going to get a lot of action here because, again, the Chinese naval base is literally right here. I mean, they're in range of anti-ship missiles from the beginning of the scenario. So if anything, they're pretty much going to hide on the coast as close as they can and basically duck into these little waterways just to keep themselves preserved as long as possible. Our southern group here, which is kind of the big one, there's a bunch of really, really nice corvettes and frigates here. If they want to chill here, they're basically going to get anti-ship missile to death. So we're also going to pull them into the shore a little bit. I'm actually going to move them to the south. We had them up top before, but now we've got them in a little bit safer of a spot. I'm going to kind of keep them as close to shore as possible here. I love to send them over to the Spratly Islands, but if I do that, it's going to be messy. Unless, of course, we change it so that for some reason the Chinese player has no access to anti-ship. Maybe they can only do this with guns. Again, this is a 2022 scenario, so it's going to be pretty messy. On the flip side, this second group down here, which is a little bit smaller than the group at the top, I would love to see them try to hide in these islands and be as effective as they can be. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move them early, and I'm just going to give them a really, really simple little kind of a random waypoints here. Move them again. And they're going to have the really, really not fun task here of basically surfing around in here and getting basically cruise missile bait. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Remember, our submarines are our secret weapons here. There's not going to be these ships. These ships are basically there to look scary and then disappear as fast as they can, preferably under the cover that's going to be provided them to the south. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and deselect all my reference points. I'm going to go ahead and create an area. Again, control right click if you need the button for it. I'm going to define this little zone here. I'm just going to call this one C control. C control. One thing I will do that some people always make some mistake. Be very careful here, by the way. When we're going to do this, you want to actually go into your missions MCON here, and you want to make sure you do not use active anything here. If you do, actually, I can just press inherit from. It's much safer. And now we're going to be safe in that regard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to these units here, and we can just go ahead and add the whole surface action group. So let's see if I can find that particular group. I think what do we name them? I think it was a regional SAG 2 or something like that. First regional SAG. Hey, that's them. Right click. Boop. And now they are on the mission. These guys know not to turn on any of their active equipment. They're basically just there to be nice and annoying and irritating. Sorry about that. Okay, so they're going to go float into there. This group's going to stay close to the shore. Interesting. I wish you'd go back where you belonged. That was weird. Let's go ahead and grab this one. Let's hit F4 mode. Let's go pop a look at this one. What was that about? I'm going to set your station relative bearing to right where you're parked. Nice. I'm not sure what that was about. But again, we saw that the other day too, so it does not surprise me. It's still being irritating. All right, cool. So these guys are going to be all nice and irritating in there, which is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and spread out my submarines. Fairly widespread, but remember, it's going to be the airplanes that do the deed here. I'm actually going to take these two submarines. I'm actually going to bring them down here. Yeah, there we go. Now we're in business. I'm actually going to add them onto that mission as well. So let's call this C control. I'll grab this one as well. I'll set this one to C control as well. And now we're in business. The only thing I really have left to do is to make sure everybody goes slow so they don't get picked up right away. All right, so we've got a screening force. We've got ourselves a pretty sight thing with the Spratly Islands. We've got our Air Force all set up. We've got our missions all set up. There's one more thing I'm going to do. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go ahead and establish a radar station if I can. I don't know that I'll be able to here. I'm assuming that my depth is going to be a little bit too dramatic. A quick and easy way to do this, by the way, is if you switch to relief mode, it's going to take a second, but what will happen is you'll actually get a slightly different view, which will allow you to see, we don't have that in this version. That's right. There you go. See how you can see these little yellow specks? Those are the actual islands that you can put people on. So if I hold my mouse right here, bing, now I can go ahead and throw myself an early warning radar. So let's see here. We need a Vietnamese. It could be a P-19, something like that. We could also say we borrowed one from Russia. We'll use a tin shield for this. Thanks, Russia. You've been extremely helpful for us today. I'm going to park that right there. I'm going to flip it on real fast. And now we've made things slightly more fair for the Vietnamese, because at least they're going to have a little bit of early warning. Of course, we'll go up here real fast. I just saw it a second ago. There we go. And it would be kind of appropriate here if we had some kind of anti-ship. So let me go ahead and see if there's any silkworms I can borrow here or something like that. Let's see. We need an SSM. Again, we're just trying to somewhat balance things out here. But again, when you play this scenario 600 times, you're going to find exactly where everything needs to be. This is just for basic purposes here. Exoset. That would be kind of fun. I sort of like that idea. I don't know if Vietnam has any actually domestically produced anti-ship missiles. I get the feeling they do not. Oh, they do. Nice. We have the Stooge, which is the K300. Okay, that's not bad. We also have the Elbrus, which is pretty nice. K300, I just want to confirm it's what I think it is. Target surface ships. Delightful. Yes. So we'll put one of these guys here, and we're basically going to give him permission to shoot at everything. Optimistic. Let her rip. Let's go ahead and get another one of those. I think I saw another island just over here on the right there. Try to hold my finger in the world's teeny tiniest pixel here. Zoom in a little bit. Zoom in a little bit. Oh, it doesn't recognize it as an island. Oh, for shame. For shame. How about this island right here? Hey, lucky us. Cool. Let's go ahead and order him as well to just go to town and against anything he sees. And again, these are all those like freak, oh, I should have known that they would have put something there. And of course, if we wanted to make things a little more challenging, we could also provide some sort of SAM site or something along these lines to go ahead and now, like I said, complicate matters. I just would have sworn I would have gotten lucky over here. I guess my accuracy here is not quite as good. There's a couple over on that side. Let's go borrow this one next to the tin shield. Is this an island? Come on, island. I could always put you next to the tin shield if you prefer. Nope, I'm guessing I'm not going to be able to get this. Bummer. Try this one. Nope. 1339 feet. Lame. All right, I'm going to leave it at that then. I'm not going to mess with it too much. We'll assume, by the way, of course, by the time these ships get in place, they do have some anti-aircraft capability, so it'll make things a little interesting for us. Okay, so that is it for the Vietnamese. Again, this is the basic. We can go back in and clean this up a lot later, which we're going to have to with events, but I'm not worried about it too much today. So now what I want to do is I want to flip over to the Chinese side of things. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to China. Let's save our scenario. And right now, China's got nothing. There are two major ports that we're going to be interested in here. The first one is going to be on the southern side of this business right here. You have the Yulin Air Base. I can't pronounce anything. I'm sorry. This is the Yulin Naval Base. It's actually located right down here, kind of on the tip of everything. If you've ever seen this one before, they basically kind of hang out. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit and actually show you to where it is. There it is. You can see it's got this nice little protected zone, and this is the naval base itself. This is a relatively small naval base as far as China goes, but you can literally see the two gigantic piers here. I mean, that thing is almost half a mile long, and you've got this nice protected shore, and you can see that the waves aren't nearly as bad here. You also have a little place to pop out, and you can also go around and check out the beach as well. Now, whenever you have a naval base, 99% of the times, there's usually an air base right next to it, and I'm taking a look real quickly. I'm playing the air base game. Looks like an airbase, but I'm pretty confident that's just a road. A little bit of research on my part, and I'll actually be able to locate what that is. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this one set up. So I'm going to make sure I'm saved. I'm going to make sure I'm on Chinese side real quick, which looks good. I'm going to go ahead and create myself a couple really, really big piers here. Again, these are going to be where things are going to be coming from. These are obviously extra large piers, and their orientation is doo-doo. Let's go ahead and spin them around real fast. Let's do one of these things. Hey, I like that. 175. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. I don't know why they decided not to duplicate the orientation. That's just something that should have been in command like years ago, in my opinion. But again, it doesn't stop me from playing this game, as everybody knows. All right, so we got a couple of ports there. These piers look a little bit shorter, but they're still 300 meters long. So that tells me that there's probably some shorter ships there. 300 meters is still considered to be extra large. Yikes. All right, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. That looks pretty good. I'm not going to adjust the orientation. So they're going to be pointing upward. Whatever. No big deal. Looks like we'll probably have some kind of radar station chilling right there. Let me zoom in a little bit. Again, we're going to use some quick assuming here. I'm assuming there's going to be an ammo bunker. I'm going to put it right here. Call it an ammo bunker. We're going to do a surface one real fast. We'll do an ammo bunker on the surface. We'll go ahead and do another one. We're also going to assume there's some big old gas drums. We'll get some diesel real quick. We'll call these diesel bunkers. We'll get a couple of those. And, I'm a nice guy, so I'm also going to throw a crane there just for fun. We got to have some fun with these things. Again, these are targets at some point. All right, that looks good to me. And we also have a radar station right there on the corner. I'm going to go ahead and group these together. Press the F4 key, or I should say rename key. Coach Yang, Naval Base. Again, my pronunciations are terrible. I apologize in advance. My Chinese is just not... I found the airbase right there. I was right. My Chinese is just not great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this real quickly. And we're going to have to start thinking about what our naval assets are going to look like. But I want one more airbase. And you're probably saying, oh, this is the tedious part. Yeah. But we're going to go scoot up to Shenzhen real quickly. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I always mess this one up. We're basically going to be interested in, there's a port right on the east side. Now, if you ask me exactly what the name of this body of water is, you are asking the wrong person. I think this is the Shitzi Ocean or something like that. And again, I'm guessing in that particular. We got Hong Kong down here, which is obviously, you want to talk about some important things. You also have Zhuhai, which is over here. This is a mega port up this way. Going up this way, of course, it's going to get right up to Shenzhen itself. You have Foshan over here, and of course you have Dugan over on that side as well. I'm just going to assume that we're probably going to be located somewhere on this coast down here, very close to where Zhuhai is. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to do a little bit of interpretation here. Alrighty, let's do some satellite photo work here today. So let's see here. We've got this whole business right here. Hey, that's a runway. Hey. Okay, I found what I was looking for. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and build this one as well. We'll go ahead and put our port cranes in first. No, you do not need port cranes. They're completely redundant. But I'm noticing, I'm holding my mouse here, and it says that the elevation is not correct. That simply means that the resolution here is just not good enough for putting the port where I wanted it to. So I'm actually going to simplify my port just a teeny tiny bit. Let's get ourselves a couple piers. Let's do some very large pier. And we'll do extra large piers. Why not? Copy. I'm going to assume there's another one that's going to be over here. I'm assuming there's another one here. Ah, jerk. Ah, jerk, jerk. Come over here. Do I got a spot? Delightful. Let's go ahead and put in our ammo. We don't necessarily need ammo, but I don't know. It means more to me, I guess. Put some ammo. Put some diesel there as well. diesel, diesel. We'll go ahead and do that one. And we'll go ahead and get ourselves grouping this together. And we'll call this ZHUHI. I have no idea if my spelling is remotely accurate here. But, we'll deal with what I got there. Cool. All right. So now let's worry about some of those air bases that we were discussing. So there's a lot of different planned air bases. As again, People's Liberation Air, Army, Navy. If you actually go to the import-export units, I'm sure that they already have those imports that we just built. And that's going to make me feel stupid, but that happens. Beijing, Jiangsu, Hainan Island. Ta-da! Oh, look at this. This is a happy day. Nice. So we have all of the air bases on Hainan. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up real quick. Delightful. Of course, we also have Shenyang. Let me see. We have all the air bases up there. Oh, sweet. Hook me up. And this is when I realized my Chinese geography is actually not as good as I thought it was. Sorry about that. All fixed. Cool. All right. But what we did do is we got all the air bases down here. And was I right? Oh my gosh, I was right. And again, I'm doing this just as I'm kind of doing this. This is how I do it in the real world. The interesting thing, though, is I noticed that my air base is not the air base that I thought it was. But I'm still going to count it. I'm still going to count it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have to do a little bit of research and find out what kind of aircraft the Chinese are going to have at their disposal, especially on Hainan Island there. And again, I'm pronouncing that terribly, but deal. All right, so the first thing we're going to find is Yixian Sanya Air Base. Coming up here, we have Lidong. We also have Lingshui. And of course, coming all the way up here, we have, oh my gosh, I'm not even going to try. The one with the J. And let's see what I can do with just poking around with some quick research. All right, we've actually got some luck here. Fortunately for us, somebody took some time. This is AirPower OS. Some people have an opinion on this website. For the purposes of just enjoyment and gaming, I'm perfectly fine with it. So poking around, I was going down on Nanjing MR, which I believe is kind of the obelisk, if you prefer. And I'm kind of poking around, and I noticed that my little Lingxi is actually located here, which is actually good news, because that can tell us exactly what our different places are going to be down. Let's see if I can poke, right here. Lingxi, which has, it's going to be the 9th FD PLAN. It's going to have J8Bs and J8Ds. We also know that, taking a look at our different bases we have here, we also have Yaxian, which again, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that correctly. Yaoshin, I'm going to have to go poking around to actually track this down. One thing I am noticing is there's a general trend, though. There seems to be a lot of these J6s and a lot of these J8s. So if I had to basically randomly plop a lot of these things down, I could probably kind of randomly plop them down like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this information and I'm going to load it right into the simulator as it shows. All right, we're in business. So it turns out from what I could do in my little research here is there's a pretty good mix of mostly Air Force units, mostly fighters. There's not actually a lot of really, really long-range maritime patrol or anything along those lines. So what I actually had to do is poke around a bit to try to find something that made a little bit sense. Up here with Jalilishi, basically what I did is I grabbed some of these J7s. This is actually who's present. Coming down here in Flu, we have some HY-60s. These are pretty cool bombers because they're also tankers, which we're going to desperately need. Coming down here at Lidong, basically they have some of the navalized flankers. Swinging down here, we've got a couple of these Y8s. Now, these are interesting aircraft. These are basically AN-12s that they're using for the purposes of anti-submarine warfare, which is going to be needed. And coming up here, of course, we have two different types of J8 Finbacks, which are pretty nice aircraft. It's definitely a unique aircraft. There's nothing quite like it that I've seen before. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the naval assets here. So we know coming down here, and the naval base, we want to think a little bit about what we have at our disposal. All right, poking around, if we were to make a Chinese surface action force, what would it look like? We know, for example, we have a Type 2, we have a Type 1 carrier, we have the Shandong, and we have the Liandong, which, again, if we want to combine them into one force, it would be incredibly embarrassing if they got wrecked, but this would be a great time for one of these two to kind of show off. So I'm kind of debating, kind of feeling the Type 1 carrier, not going to lie here. We, of course, can have a little bit of fun with this. As everybody knows, just like it says here, it's basically Admiral Kuznetsov air class from the Russians that they had bought. As far as amphibious warfare ships, remember this is going to be an operation in securing the area and basically denying Vietnam access to that particular region. So there will be some amphibious warfare as well. So what we're thinking a little bit about here is we've got a couple in sea trials. We have a bunch of these LPDs. These are the Type 71, and we know we have 7 of them. So just kind of doing some mental math here. We know we have a bunch of LSTs, which we're going to need as well, basically the Type 72 families. So we're going to go down 1, 2. Okay, I'm just working on the back of my head here. Scrolling down here, we're going to definitely need some fine destroyers here. here, given that this is probably going to be a show of force to make it seem even more hopeless for Vietnam, they're probably going to be picking something that's fairly effective. So just poking around here, the Type 55 isn't too bad. Obviously, the Type 51C, there's not a lot of these, so if we're going to pull one of those out. We also have the Type 52Ds, which is a little bit more old school, but these are still really, really nice ships as well. We also have 956s, which is a Sovremenye, which is a very, very solid design. It's also an anti-ship destroyer, so we're definitely going to bring a couple of those along with us. Frigates, naturally, you're going to have some kind of frigates. Type 54s, we have plenty of those frigates, and of course, we could bring around some of the Jingweis as well. Coming all the way down to corvettes, basically they have Type 56, which they've got plenty of, and then of course you have the missile boats, which I'm going to leave out completely because there's a lot of these, and it would be pretty amazing to just send a wall of missile boats at the Vietnamese Navy, but that's just going to be messy, and it's going to be basically a waste of resources. It's nice, but it's not going to work well. MCM, and of course we have some fleet replenishment. So with all these things in mind, I'm going to quickly put together what looks like our little surface action group. All right, we're looking like we're in pretty good shape now. We've gone ahead and set everything up. The first group we have here is we have the Chinese surface action group here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on so you can see. We have a pretty good mix of different escorts. Obviously, this would be a very, very heavily escorted group because it is one of China's only aircraft carriers. The carrier itself parked right in the middle of all this one. This is our Type 1. We basically have two different groups. We have J-15Ds, we have J-15Ss, as well as a good little group of ships here. So my mind would probably tell me that the first concern that the Chinese Navy is going to have is going to be the Vietnamese Air Force. Obviously, they're going to be trying to seek them out and engaging them and taking advantage of their escorts, but at the very least, they're going to have something that can protect them. The second priority, of course, is going to be to try to attack these different locations down here. Now, if you were clever, you would actually let the player go ahead and decide exactly how they feel they should equip their different forces. But basically what we're going to do is establish a time limit that they could basically run into here. And by keeping that time limit nice and tight, you make things very, very interesting for the player. Do I go fast? Do I go slow? How do I deploy my assets? And it makes for a much more dynamic and very, very interesting kind of a game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and now kind of program everybody here with kind of the basic set. And then since we've been going on for quite a little while here, I'm going to go ahead and do that real fast, show you what I got, and then we're going to call it a day. All right, that looks pretty good for a starter. Now we've got the J-15s. They're going to be equipped, obviously, for air-to-air warfare. These are cap planes. Swinging down here, the Flying Sharks. They're going to have both anti-ship technology as well as some 500-kilogram bombs. Our Super Freelons, are basically going to be equipped both with torpedoes as well as sonobuoys. They're going to be the most critical assets we have here. One thing I did not mention is heading up to the north, we have our Amphibious Action Group, and you can see that it's I've actually pulled out a couple different frigates for the purposes of protecting this group. I'm going to switch it to this mode. There we go. So now you can kind of see everything as I kind of broke it all down. Again, we have the LHD in the middle with a bunch of helicopters, and its primary objective is basically going to get into this region without taking any serious nasty casualties. But again, we'll have to kind of see how that all plays out next time. Enjoy.